seeing some younger people here today. I want to say something. It's a little on the sad side. But when President Kennedy was assassinated in 1960, I grew up with the conventional wisdom that every 20 years or every 2 decades, a president would die in office. Often it was from natural causes, but a lot of times from assassination. The good news is, since President Kennedy, no president has died in office. But it was still pretty shocking last Saturday night when we had an incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and a man did try to go in and apparently do harm to the president. I would assume he wanted to assassinate him. So that really wasn't news, because even in those 6 decades since President Kennedy, we've had a lot of attempts to shoot our president. Gerald Ford shot twice, Ronald Reagan once. We've always been a violent country. So what's new? Well, I would say what's new is not the violence, but is the rhetoric coming from the White House. And to me, that has a very important element of injustice to it. Usually when we have an event like that, the White House, probably the biggest bully pulpit that we have, issues statements that talk about the need for less violence, the need to come together as a country, the need to be better to each other. If you will, we all need to be kind. But of course, by Sunday afternoon, again, the event happened Saturday night. We were here Sunday. We really weren't hearing very much. But by Sunday afternoon, the opposite happened. We have our president and his White House staff issuing one divisive message after another. It's not new. It's not new for him. But what's new, from my point of view, is prior to this, it was on the campaign trail. Now, that's not an excuse for bad behavior, but I've been willing to cut people a little slack on the campaign trail because you're trying to compete against somebody else. But once you're in the White House, to me, you have a different responsibility and you have a different audience that you should be mindful of. So what did they say? Well, first of all, they said that those who disagreed with them, they're all thugs who live like vermin. That's the kind of language we hear from the White House. They go on to constantly this week speak of their domestic opponents as a greater threat than countries like Russia, China, or North Korea. They go on to talk about immigrants, whether documented or not documented, as poisoning our nation's blood instead of recognizing their contributions to our culture and our economy. They call the news media who report on these things the enemies of the country and throw around the term treason. And just to remind you, that's punishable by death. But they throw it around recklessly as if anyone who's against them is basically up for treason or is engaging in treasonous behavior. They've referred to bloodbaths as if that's something we should sort of condone, that that's the way we would respond to these kinds of incidents. So unlike prior presidents, we have a president who relishes in dividing the country. Rather than understanding that he is president of all the people, he has created the belief that only some of us are worthy of being citizens. This rhetoric is highly corrosive of our politics and easily leads those people who are on the edge to commit violence. So I would say that before this administration starts pointing fingers, they should look at themselves in the mirror. As the aphorism goes, if you want to get respect, you got to give respect. Using language the way the White House does leads us to less respect, less civility, and unfortunately, more violence. Thank you.